Ouch. That is all that I could remember saying until I blacked out. My inability to remember what happened to me before only made it more difficult for me to think straight. I am awake, but my head is throbbing and it is pitch black in here. The only thing I can actually make out is the foundation that I am sitting on, a bench of some sort. I can tell that it is not that stable because I kick off the ground and the bench starts to sway. Almost like a swing, but not exactly like one. Then I noticed something about the room I was confined in. The room was dark and cold, just like a jail cell, and this bench similar to those inside of cells. I could not tell if there was an exit or not, and then I realized what was actually happening. I was captured. Eagerly, the woman inside the cell stands on her feet and chants, "Interim incendium." And just like that, the bench she was sitting on moments ago was inflamed with fires as hot as the surface of the sun. The light that was coming off from the flames was bright enough to illuminate the entire cell. She wore a black cloak with a black dress that held her body and expanded out from the waist. Her hair, a dark brown color, fell to her shoulders and her eyes had a golden brown hue. She was beautiful. The woman faced the only exit from the room and was going to escape from it. They do not know who they are messing with, I say, kicking the door open and stepping into the long, narrow corridor that led to a well-lit room. There. That is where I will most likely find them, my captors. And they pissed off the wrong witch today. I start walking, confidently and speedily towards my destination. As I get closer to the door, it is like something is preventing me from running there to kick down the door in order to punish the people who captured me. Voices filled my head and questions began to flutter here and there. I was doing it. I had to do it, but I had to do it in a way that they know I am not dangerous. What should I do? Oh God, I'm at the door, and it's like an impulsive reaction when I raise my fist to the door, and I am knocking. I slowly open the door and I can already hear the voices on the opposite side. I push the door open and walk into the room. Yeah, I crept up behind her and smacked her in the head with the shovel. She won't remember anything, the man says and starts laughing. He had a beard or whatever it is called. It was not shaved or trimmed, and I swear he could have used a haircut. Dirty haircuts were so last year, I thought. His teeth were crooked and acne covered his face from top to bottom. He had on a red button-up shirt and a pair of faded pants. The guy had seemed to not care about his appearance, and was obviously the opposite of the person sitting across of him. It is a lady. She had long, wavy brown hair that fell to her elbows. Her posture was almost perfect, and she had on the darkest shade of red on her lips. She was gorgeous. Then all of a sudden, their attention was on me. My, what have we got here? Witchy go bye-bye? The lady says sarcastically. Where do you think you are going? There's a reason why you're here. No need to be so impatient. What did you do to me, and who says I'm a witch? I spat back with anger levels rising. I was so frustrated, I just wanted to know where, why, and what as soon as possible. And then I did the worst thing I could have ever done. I had to attack. There wasn't any time for mediation at this point. I'm trying so hard to prevent a fight from happening, but if she wanted to fight, there will be a fight. I wanted to bury this scumbag's body. How would she know I was a witch? I never practiced magic outside of my house unless... How do you know me? And who are you? I say, while I get a hold of her neck, ready to squeeze until no air could pass through. I need to know why. I can't kill her now with all these questions in my head, I thought. But there was something weird about it. About her, because she just laughed. My hand was on her throat and she was laughing. She deserves to die. I was about to choke her, and then... Interim La Costa, she let out, and the next thing I knew, I was on the floor. It felt as if something was killing me from the inside out. It felt as if my insides were being gashed out with the rustiest knife on the planet. Motus, she says, and I was thrown across the room into the wall. She's a witch, but something is different about her magic. It was very similar to mine, like almost identical. And then I realized what had happened. I had been kidnapped by my own coven of witches. I was kidnapped by the Gemini witches, and then I blacked out. I wake up slightly lightheaded, and it appeared to be morning already. The sun was shining through the window, and I felt at home. It took me a while to realize where I'm at. I am in my old room that the coven had surprisingly kept clean while I was away. Although I wasn't away, I took off. I'm an orphaned witch, and I have always been told that I would not be as strong as the witches with mothers because of this celestial bond between everyone. I did not have that. I did not have anything, anyone, any place, and so I ran. I am still astonished by the fact that they were able to find me. I cloaked myself daily with my coven's cloaking spell, and it can only be taken down by the person who had cast the spell, and the person he or she is bound to. I have to try and get out of here. I began to chant. Leois, Geminiois, Capriciois, Cloacis Mingarum. A basic cloaking spell, over and over and over. A knock on the door broke my concentration, and I was ready to attack. My coven kidnapped me. This cannot be. Well, okay, so they did not necessarily kidnap me. They practically welcomed me back with a clean room. But still, I am not giving them a second chance to attack. Come in, I say. The knob turned, and then the lady walked in. This time, she looks more approachable and kind of familiar. Like, I knew who she is, but I didn't. Still, she did attack me first. I let her take a few steps in, and asked if she already knew I was going to throw her ass across the room. She spoke. Bonnie, we need to talk, she says. I haven't introduced myself to her, and yet she knew my name. What the hell is this mind-boggling that I'm going through? No one knew my name. I switched names every time I entered a new town, and yet she knew my true name. What do you want? Are you here to throw me across the room with your basic incantations again? What are you going to do? I say threateningly. Throw me a couple spells? You think I'm a toy? You don't even know who I am. I did not tell you Bonnie was my name. So tell me who you are and how you'd know me before I send your ass into the pits of Tartarus. I can show you better than I can tell you, my dear. You just have to trust me. As she says this, she starts approaching me slowly. Stop right there. You do not have the right to call me your dear. I do not know you. Back up right now, you pathetic excuse for a witch. Regardium Sacristao. With those words, the doors locked and it was just me and her in that room. She seems to be astonished, and then somewhat proud that I'm able to cast the spell. What's with that smirk on your face? What's so funny? You mad because you can't cast one of the most advanced concealment spells in the Grimoire? Huh. How long have you been with my coven? Longer than you think, Bonnie. Longer than you, to be exact. And as for this smirk on my face, it is because I am proud of you. I haven't seen a witch at your level contain the power to cast my concealment spell. You wrote that spell? I would believe you since you do claim to be here longer than me, but my mother wrote that spell, and she's dead. Are you sure about that? She says. She sounded so convincing, and I started to believe her. I had not actually gone to the extent to confirm whether or not she was dead. I just sort of took off. So there is this possibility that this woman, my captor, could be my mother. Cut to the chase. Are you or are you not my mother? And if you dare to say yes, come here and show me what you meant. Show me that we are bound to one another like mother-daughter witches are. And with that last line, tears left the sockets in my eyes. I want her not to be my mother, but I want her to be it even more. No one understands what it's like to be without a mother, especially in a system that is completely matriarchal. I always believed that I was the weakest of the witches in the coven because my mom died. However, if this woman is my mom, that explains everything. Why I am stronger than some of the witches that have mothers, why I am stronger than ever, and why I can keep my magic under control even without my mother's guidance. But perhaps she was guiding me all along, in spirit. The only question left to be answered was why. With pain in her eyes, the woman who says she is my mother comes to me and holds me in her arms while saying, "Let me show you." She then puts her palms against my temples and I'm suddenly thrown into this wormhole of memories. It is weird. It was as if I was in her body. I watched her give me to the elders, asking them to keep me a secret. I saw her guide me while I grew up, teaching me my very first spells and telling me the importance of concealment. Then my questions were answered. I realized why she gave me up. It was not for her benefit, but for mine. She was a beginning witch herself, and having a child at her age was not approved by the Gemini witches. They would have killed me. At that moment, I burst into tears. Streams of water were falling down my cheeks as my mom lifted my head in order to speak to me while making eye contact. "I am so sorry, my dear Bonnie," I remember her saying. "I did not want you to be hurt because of me, and that is why I had to give you to the elder witches, those of which I could trust. But you have to get yourself together. I'll explain every detail later, but if you want to live, you need to help me overthrow our government." She led me down the long corridor that seemed too familiar, because I was just imprisoned in one of these rooms, which reminded me. "Sorry for starting that fire yesterday," I say apologetically. "It is fine. Nothing a little renewal spell cannot fix. Now, enter through here. Age before beauty, you know," she says, laughing as she led me into a library-like room. Only this room was 3 times the size of a regular library. This is the Gemini Library, where spells dating back into the earlier states of magic that our coven uses are held. It ranges in everything from the basic fire-starting incantations to spells that require 2 to 3 of our most powerful witches to cast, such as my concealment spell. However, since we are bound by blood, even you can cast my most powerful spells alone. "Why did you wait so long before you contacted me, like in physical form?" I ask. "It is not that simple, Bonnie. I had to wait for your 16th birthday, which was yesterday. I had to capture you the day before, keep you knocked out until midnight of your birthday, and then allow you to cast a spell on your own before I could tell you. The 16th birthday is the year that witches call Leona de Completa. Basically, the year of completion. The year you officially get all your power granted to you. And that's why your spell was so strong. Because you got stronger." "Okay, I get it. I have my powers heightened to their peak, so what do you need with me?" "Why do we have to overthrow the government?" I didn't mean to sound like a brat, but the butterflies inside my stomach were dying to know my purpose. "Mom, please?" I thought referring to her as my mother would lighten up the mood just a little. "Okay, your Aunt Elizabeth and your Uncle John are the elders that helped nurse you while you were growing up. I need you to help me save them because they are about to be hung. They are accused of witchcraft and they swear the court has no proof of such. I need you to help me save them. I owe them that. We owe them that," she pled. Even with how much I wanted to not believe that, I knew she was right. "I have an idea. We get the girls who accused her to discredit themselves. Not in the same way, however, but in different ways," I was suggesting. "We make the ones with less power in the court become liars and those with greater power do something crazy, like skip town. What do you think?" Eagerly responding, she said, "I think I have just the right spell, but it needs to be cast at a certain time." "Well, don't keep it to yourself. When is it?" I began pestering her with questions. "Tomorrow, at midnight, where the moon is at its highest and I can call upon its power. November 3rd is the night in which the moon is at its highest, and therefore tomorrow would be the perfect night. Okay, I respond. Throughout the night of November 3rd, my newly discovered mother and I were working hastily to gather the necessary elements to cast this spell. We gathered a toad's tongue, lizard tails, and spider legs. It's like I had casted it before, although I know I hadn't. Had the newly validated bond between me and my mother suddenly linked us to each other's past? I couldn't ask questions now because caregivers of my childhood are going to be hung in 12 hours. We have to cast the spell in 6, which meant that they have to get out in at least 11. We watched the moon rise, and at 11:30, we both started the spell, calling upon the moon spirits to allow our pleas to be heard, containing the magic of the moon in our mother-daughter pentagram, and finally gathering the essence out of our collection of animal parts, and we were only waiting for the time. Where's the list of girls? I was asking her. It's almost time. I have it here, and yes, indeed. Let's start, she says. And so we did. In sync, my mother and I began the chant that would hopefully help my aunt. Abigail, Betty, Walcott, Mary, Elizabeth, Mercy, Warren, Mary, Anne and Susan, all ye afflicted, accused with no proof, therefore deserve to be picked with. We conjure you, the yin and yang, to give us power to do the right thing. Mother and daughter, Bonnie and Shirley. I start to look at her because until that point, I only knew her as that lady, and for a short time, Mom, but never her real name. She noticed I stopped chanting and signaled me to continue. And so I did, with my mother, who I suddenly felt closer to than ever. Mother and daughter, Bonnie and Shirley, ask you the moon spirits to do this bid for thee. Witches of the east, witches of the west, deserve a time of extended rest. Begone this time of hangings without proof. Begone these accusers, give them no roof. As if the moon is speaking to us, the winds surrounding us start to speed up. Repeating the chant over and over, my mother and I in unison will the power of the moon to carry out our request. And at the end of the 5th chant, the air breaks and everything blacks out. My head is pounding when I awake from what seems like an endless slumber. My mom is sitting across me holding out a cup of what I assumed was chamomile tea. My favorite. The tea definitely helped, and then I start to recall last night's events. Then I start asking my questions. What happened? Did our spell work? I ask. Looking just as anxious as I probably did, she responded with, I hope so. Looking just as anxious as I probably did, she responded with, I hope so. Your aunt and uncle were set to be hung today at 6. It's 6:01. I am waiting for word on whether or not they were hung. She rises to place her teacup in the sink, and then our doors were opened by someone outside the room. Expecting it to be a serial witch killer, I am most especially surprised when a lady, I assume it was Aunt Elizabeth, runs inside and hugs my mother, and then me. They pardon us all, Shirley. All of us. You, me, Bonnie, John, all of us. Free again, without the burden of carrying a cloak to shield our true beings. My a little too excited aunt says. Then for the first time in my new life, I see my mother cry. Where's John? She asks as tears roll off her cheeks as she hugs her sister. Where is he? How are you? I'm so sorry for not going to get you sooner. I was just scared and I didn't know. My aunt cuts her off. It's okay, I understand. But the weirdest thing happened today. Just as they were going to hang us, news that our accusers have fled town with some of Reverend Paris's money. I thought of it actually, she said almost cheerfully. The other girl started saying a bunch of random phrases and ended up admitting that they were all lying all along. Then we were pardoned, the witches of the Gemini Coven and any other coven to be exact. We're free. I came here as fast as I could, and as for John, he's still handling some paperwork at the court so that something so tragic wouldn't happen again. Just as my aunt, who escaped the hanging, started celebrating, more tears fall from my mom's eyes. She looks me in the eyes and nods while smirking. In that instant, I knew. Our spell had worked, and a tear fell from my eye because I knew it was the end of it all. It was the end of the Salem witch trials, the end of witches everywhere hiding in the dark, and the beginning of my new life with my mother. Our bond held us together, made us stronger, and it helped me get through this time. My bond with even my mother has suddenly grown stronger, and this time, together, we will only help it evolve into something even stronger. A few years later, I grab my journal and sit on my desk that my mom built for me. I scribble the thoughts that I have to share on a page of the journal and write. Dear Journal, it's been a while since my mother and I casted that spell, and I think everything is going pretty swell. The humans and the witches have agreed to live in harmony, with some special circumstances, of course. They will not pose a threat to us witches as long as we keep our magic practices secluded and out of the sight of other mortals. So far, this agreement seems to work well. I can go into town whenever I need anything and not have to worry about getting hanged. Aunt Elizabeth and Uncle John also seem to be living their lives as they please. They moved out of town shortly after they were set free from the hangman's noose. They said their goodbyes, and we did too. They wanted to start fresh, and I understand that it is difficult to start fresh in a city you were nearly murdered in. They moved to New Jersey, not too far from us, so we can visit every once in a while. I'm not sure about the gender, but Mother told me that my aunt is expecting. I'm so excited for her. And as for me, Journal, I'm happy everything turned out the way that it did. I found my mom and learned many new spells as a result of the trials. I prefer to refer to them as the darker years though. My mom and I also moved, but not out of town, just to another house. This house is the perfect size for me and my mom. 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. I like how we live now, peacefully. No one seems to understand how the darker days were because most people in town have already put it behind them. But they seem really happy. I want to live like them, so I have to let it go. And for whoever is reading this, 10 to maybe 100 years from now, let that be your focus of your life. You need to be happy in order to live happily, and if letting go of something or someone important in your life is the only way to reach it, let it free. Bonnie. I closed the journal and tossed it into my bed. What I had just told the future witches of the Gemini Coven was true. I have to let go if I want to be happy, and so I shall.